Good evening. It's 8 o'clock in Istanbul and 7 o'clock in Tel Aviv, if I'm not wrong. I'd like to welcome all our students, all our fellow academicians, professionals from the field, and welcome all those who are related or not but interested in the field. Before I welcome tonight's keynote speaker, Mr. Eyal GEVER, I'd like to apologize for my bad voice. Yesterday I lost my voice and today I had all the cure that I can have. I have something with pepper and honey and I don't know whatever stuff. So I'll do my best to speak. But tonight it's not for me to speak. It's going to be our keynote speaker. But before I welcome him, I would like to give a brief explanation about what INDA is. INDA is an e-journal. It is the only peer-reviewed e-journal in the field of interior design in Turkey. Besides being an e-journal, it's also a platform of versatile contributions from different fields of design, and due to that goal, tonight we have a digital artist. Welcome, Mr. GEVER. How are you?
Hi, hello. I'm good here in Tel Aviv. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for accepting our invitation. How was your day today?
Yeah, it was good. As always, usual in the studio working and getting ready for the call, getting ready for the talk this evening. I'm very excited to share what I work on and the way I see the world and art.
Thank you very much for your generosity. So let's begin with knowing you a bit. Who is Eyal GEVER and why does he do what he does?
Hi. So I am. My background starts with art. Since I ever remember myself, I was drawn to paint and create sculptures. I studied art in Bezalel, which is the primary art academy here in Israel. But while being a student in the early 90s, I got immersed into technology and the future. I was exposed very early on to computer simulation and the internet. And while being a student, I actually created my first startup. And the name was Zappa Digital Arts. And in this company, we've actually created some revolutionary patents and technologies. We've created the first virtual world and back in 93, 94. And out of Zappa, a very well-known company was born, ICQ, which was the first instant messenger, which later on America Online acquired.
I remember.
So I had a very intensive career, kind of a roller coaster of 18 years being an entrepreneur in technology, always pushing what's possible with visual technologies for the world of gaming, special effects, etc. But for me, art was always the base, was always the way I could communicate with the world and make sense for myself about the world. And 10 years ago, I sold my last company and cleaned my obligations to the business and was able to fully immerse myself and focus on becoming an artist. And I deliberately chose to create art that the palette or the toolbox was code, was a combination of vision technology, physics, math. And even though I studied for many years anatomy, sculpture, paintings, color theories, history of art, I believe that the role of an artist is to push the language of art forward. And for myself, I believe that successful art is one that has powerful meaning and a powerful, unique execution. And most of all, it touches people's hearts, or, and actually convey the powerful message through a unique aesthetic or a unique way to convey this message or the meaning from the artist. And so I took a deliberate decision to create art with code. And I started to investigate all sorts of situations that we humans are not normally used to experience. Whether it's at the beginning, I investigated all sorts of scenarios of what I call sublime. That could be an eruption of a volcano. It could be a simulation of a stormy ocean, a waterfall, explosions, collisions of different elements. And I created and I wrote physical 3D simulations because at the time there weren't really many off-the-shelf plugins or 3D softwares available. So I had to develop my own kind of engines and played like a mini god. I was able to create those intense situations and then freeze moments that I thought that are pinnacle within the simulations. And I started to use all sorts of computer-controlled fabrication mechanisms, such as 3D printing very early on, to fabricate and freeze moments into sculptural moments. So to summarize this question, you asked me who I am. All my life I was innovating. All my life I was creating. The first part of my career was in technology and entrepreneurships. And the last 10 years is really making art and pushing to new boundaries and extending the language of art as far as I can forward.
It's too nice to hear that. And since you mentioned that your palette is codes and sorry, the term as digital art, what are the distinctive features of digital art when compared with other branches of contemporary art or compared with new media art? What is the distinctive features of your art?
So first, I will start with the what's similar. Art. Any art should be courageous, should be innovative, and most of all, and to me most important, it should have powerful meaning. So it can really create an emotional reaction in the observer. So that's the common denominator. It doesn't matter what tool and what palette the artist is using. So it has to have substantial meaning. Specifically, the way I perceive digital art is creating art that has the ability to be reactive and responsive. And obviously the tools are code, and the art itself is created through software, and many times through hardware as well, in the case of 3D printing. What I try to do is create experiential art where the most important thing or the art is being born when there's a human observing it. And the human presence, the physicality of the human being in front of the artwork, the dimension, the distance, all that makes this artwork being responsive. I don't necessarily believe in forcing ways of interaction. I rather create subliminal interaction between my art and the observer. For example, and I will show in a minute when I will present my work, for example, having the ability to analyze using artificial intelligence the emotional state of the observer of the art, my artwork can analyze in real time the emotional state of the viewer and start to conduct a subliminal dialogue, and develop this artificial empathy. And through this experience, the art can change and reflect. And so the differentiator factor on this level of digital arts, the way I see that, is creating an immersive experiential art that is responsive. It not necessarily ends as a traditional painting or sculpture or pre-recorded video. Here, the art can breathe, can change, can respond.
Is my mic open? I'm sorry, I just snoozed. So, yes, it is. So, when you were talking about your art, you mentioned that in your past, before you became an artist, you have founded several technology high-tech startups. And I think, as I read in your resumes, you developed one of the first virtual worlds in the world.
Yeah.
Also, you have invented many widgets and many personalized three digital characters, as far as I know. So,
Yeah.
would you please also tell about them, and would you please share some of your excellent performances so that we will be enlightened, and also the
Sure.
context of those works as well, please? Sorry
Yeah.
about my
I'll be
thrilling
happy
voice.
to.
I'm sorry about it.
So, no,
Do you remember the
it's okay.
movie
It's still
Thriller
good.
of Michael Jackson? It was
Yeah.
in 1983.
Yeah.
I'm like the guy who is, talking
Ah,
behind. Sorry about it.
yeah. We all have that, especially in this COVID period. So the first part of the answer about my past, yeah. So back in '93, we literally created the first virtual world using VRML. Actually, it was '94. VRML was the first kind of standard for streaming and creating 3D on the internet. And we also use Java. Java just came out at that time from Sun Microsystem. And very quickly, we started to realize that due to the low latency and very slow connections, at the time we only had a modem of 9.9 or something, we started to invent a system which later on became known as peer-to-peer, which means that we were able to use the user's local CPU and use that to actually render and do the processing, and only use the network to transmit numerical and textual information and not visual information. So out of this effort, ICQ, the Instant Messenger, was born, and as I mentioned before, Java just started to become popular. And I came up with the idea to create those micro sites, those mini widgets, if you will, apps that are programmed in Java. And the idea was that it can contain content. So for example, it could contain content around a music group with photos and videos, and even enable you to buy tickets. But the key innovation was that people were able to propagate that virally by actually sending it through emails, posting it on websites, very much like today we see on all the internet. And I was able to create 8 fundamental patents. One of them is about that. The other one is about
8 patents.
multi-user. Yeah, with
Congratulations.
hundreds of claims, all in the field of visual communication and viral propagation and server client. But putting that aside, that's history. I think the last project I've done, it's around avatars, and I founded a company which today is pretty well known. Its name is DAD 3D, which is the largest marketplace and tool provider to create 3D human figures and characters, especially these days when NFT is becoming so popular. DAD 3D has a major game in this new market of NFT. So it's actually very popular and successful. But what I really want to use the time for is really share what I'm doing in the art world and what I'm doing with my art. So perhaps it's best if I share my screen.
Yes, please.
And start to dive into my art. So everybody sees the screen? Yeah, you can see my
Yes,
screen?
do. I mean, I can.
Okay.
Probably they also do.
Okay, great. Okay, awesome. So what I think is unique to the way I look at art and the way I create art is I always create art that is almost spiritual. And the tagline or the title I brought to this lecture was Creating Art from Energy. And the reason was that in a minute when I'll introduce my art, you will see that I create art out of simulations of different forms of energy. And but really what I'm trying to create is to convey and examine, to convey messages and examine issues that really, really bother me personally. And they surround around us, the human spirit. We live in extreme times. Things are changing rapidly. How do we adapt to this speed of change? The new revolution is already here. I mean, for example, artificial intelligence, or the impact on our ecology and the world, and other major global issues. So my art is not just aesthetic, it really communicates and try to extend discussions around those issues that are really, really important. The first project I would like to share is, it's a very exciting project, probably the most ambitious that I had the opportunity to work on. So it was like 4 or 5 years ago, I was one day approached by NASA. I literally got a phone call from NASA, and the guy on the other line said that he's managing a long-term project where their goal is to eventually enable the astronauts up there in space to be totally self-sufficient and not relying on Earth. And what they're working on is a zero-gravity 3D printer. And then he said, NASA, as a force that pushes humanity forward, we believe humans have a future in space. And a fundamental part of being human is art. We've been following what you do and your work, and we want to ask you if you'd like to create the first piece of art in space. Would you like that? I obviously said absolutely.
Who doesn't like that?
And because NASA, yeah, NASA wanted that this machine that they're creating, that the first thing it would produce in space would be art and not just a utility. So I entered into a 3 years project, very ambitious project, to create the first piece of art in space. And I came up with the idea to invite the world to laugh. I will run now a 1-minute video snippet from a big documentary that Vice have done on this project that will give a background on the project. So here goes. I was approached by NASA, and they invited me to do the first piece of art in space. And the reason was they created a new kind of a printer, a 3D printer that can print in zero gravity. And I came up with the idea, how about making a shout out to space using sound sculpture? And then a friend of mine said, why won't you do a human laughter? And I said, wow, you're so right. We all laugh. We invite people to go to the line and they can record their laughter. And then actually the wisdom of the crowd will actually choose which of the laughter they want to send to space to represent humanity. It was very intellectually challenging to try to forget about fundamental issues we have as humans and how we fuck up the world and elevate to, if we're amazing creatures and we're doing amazing things, and look where we got. So laugh is a form of energy, right? And what I've done, I created an application. And in this application, users were able to laugh, and when they laughed, their voice painted in real time a laugh star. And I made a press conference in London in December, 1st of December 2017, and I invited the world to laugh. Laugh is the most beautiful human expression. It's universal. And in 30 days, from 150, I'll just make it a little bit software. So in 30 days, from 150 countries, 300,000 laugh stars were created. And I asked people to actually promote it and also kind of vote which laughter they think should represent humanity. And so we knew at the end, in mid-January 2018, which user won sort of this competition. And it was a young woman from Seattle, and we printed her laughter in space on 10th of March. So here you can see a 3D printed version of her laughter that we printed on Earth. And here is 20 hours before the astronaut are printing her laughter in space. My team and I, we contact her, the winner, to let her know she won. And I think it's the first time that an artwork was utilizing the wisdom of the crowd and inviting the world to actually participate actively in an artwork. And so here's the moment we inform her that she won. This is really, really a special and exciting moment for us, because it's been a long journey to get to this point. And out of over 100,000 submissions of laughs in the last 30 days, guess what? Who won?
She can't believe that.
And in the next 24 hours, we're gonna print your laughter in space. So darling baby, you are the human being whose laughter gonna represent humanity in space forever.
How lucky she is.
And the next video is actually the final result, that the astronaut took this video showing the love star in space. So obviously I was very grateful for the opportunity, but more than that, I felt lucky that I'm alive at the time where the decision maker were actually thought it's important enough to enable an artist to use those expensive technologies and astronauts to create something that doesn't have any return on investment, except conveying a message of beauty and unification, and just showing humanity how fragile we are, and there's a lot to, protect. Otherwise, we may lose it. So this was Laugh. The next project I want to share.
May I ask you a question?
So the next
is there any tracking systems about this Laugh? I mean, do we know where it is right now?
Yeah, it always stays in space. Always it stays in the International Space Station. It will never come to Earth. So wherever the International Space Station is, the sculpture resides. Yeah, I didn't want to release it to space because
I thought you released it to space. I'm sorry.
No, because I didn't want it to become space pollution.
Yeah, thank you.
human are polluting space enough, and
Yeah.
I thought that it should stay within the International Space Station. That
Yeah.
was a decision.
Last week we had another keynote speaker. He is actually listening to you right now, Abel Korinsky. Also, he has an exhibition about this pollution, satellite pollution around Earth. That's interesting that it
Yeah,
overlapped it coincidentally.
yeah,
Yeah, please keep on.
yeah. It's a big issue. Thank you. So immediately after LAF, I was invited to participate in a Biennale in Germany that is curated by Professor Peter Weibel, who is the director of the ZKM Museum. For those who don't know, ZKM Museum is probably the leading museum in the world that focuses on art, science, and technology. They are based in Karlsruhe. And in Karlsruhe, there is a castle from the 17th century. It's a 400-meter wide castle. And what the museum started to do is invite every year 5 artists, and they installed 40 high-end projectors and created a projection mapping on this 400-meter castle. At the time they invited me, with me was Zaha Hadid. It was the last project she approved to the studio before she passed away. Frank Gehry and 2 other artists. And it was the first project I've done after space. And while I was working in space, when I started to work on LAF, the world was kind of okay. And through these 3 years I worked on LAF, the world started to deteriorate. It started with the Arab Spring and the terrible war in Syria, millions of refugees escaping and trying to get to Europe, the right wing rising, as well as Brexit and Trump. And when I finished LAF, I decided that this work that I have the opportunity to show in Germany, I wanted to be powerful. I wanted to actually kind of have a silent scream of my anxiety of the future of humanity. And so I used the castle as a metaphor to either a personal cleansing process that someone goes through when they cannot take reality anymore, or a metaphor to the global warming situation and the whole craziness we see in the weather. But also the third kind of metaphor was touching, I'm Israeli, I'm Jewish, I was raised in a family that was totally impacted severely by the Holocaust in World War II in Germany. And that year that I presented this work, Markel was the only leader in the West that literally accepted 1 million refugees. And so I wanted to show that from a place that pure evil happened in World War II, there is hope, and Markel showed hope. So I created cleansing. The whole work was around 10 minutes. What I'll show now is a minute. It's always done in code, computer simulation, where I'm flooding the castle gradually, until it breaks down and rebuild itself. So let me show that for you guys. So that was cleansing. The next project I want to share relates to the human spirit. I was invited to another Biennale, also in Germany, and with me there were 6 other artists. Each one received from the curator a wall to project their art. And for me, they gave me a lake. And I came up with the idea to create a light sculpture. And what I've developed is a fountain. It's a water wall. And at the time I was developing with 3 post-PhDs a technology that enabled me to capture human movements in a radically new way. Until then, we only saw motion capture, but motion capture always created this uncanny feeling where you saw that it's computer generated. In art, you cannot have excuses. Art needs to be striving for greatness. And I wanted to develop this way that I can actually parse data from the real world into my software. So we've created this volumetric capture rig where we placed 12 cameras that recorded in 60 frames per second each camera. And we wrote a software that was able to take every point of view and triangulate it. And this data enabled me to capture human movements in photorealism. It was few years back. And then I used the data and I created a liquid simulation. Here is an example of a dancer where it's totally simulated as a liquid dancer. Is the video running okay?
No, actually, it's running frame by frame. I mean, like 15 frames or 30 frames. So it's like a stop motion
And also
video.
Okay. And also the previous video?
The previous video was okay, but
Yeah.
this one is like a
This one
stop
is
motion.
not as good. Okay. I apologize on the network.
Okay, right now it's okay.
Here is the okay. So here is the result where you see this holographic light sculpture of the water dancer. And the simulation is projected on water. So it's a liquid simulation projected on water, and it's creating this mesmerizing new form of a sculpture, if you will. And the human movement is very, very accurate.
Let's go. So long. Like off is cool.
I'll show another example. This was commissioned by the Tel Aviv municipality during the Eurovision that we had a year ago, and it was displayed on the beach, on the Tel Aviv beach, and the optics is very unique. It's as if you see augmented reality, but in the real world.
Yeah, exactly. Crazy interesting.
So then I extended my work and created a whole exhibition, which I called Uncanny State, Notion of Acceptance. And what I've done, I took the same data of the dancer, but I wrote 6 different physical simulation technologies or engines. Each one is representing the core elements of our universe. So whether it's water, fire, air, nitrogen, oxygen, ether. And what I've created is simulations that each one of those dancers is a driving force to this element. And I've created this dance group where I display them as video sculptures, where I kind of investigated different screening technologies, transparent or solid LED screens. So when you entered the exhibition, you saw all the dancers performing. And then when you got closer to each one of the dancers, the mental experience was totally different because air is very gentle compared to fire, right? So it created this an emotional response uniqueness based on each video sculpture. So this is the ether. Here you can see all the simulations.
Yeah.
And if people would like, after my speech, I can share a link to Google slide presentation so they can see the art better on their own computers if the streaming quality is not best here while I present.
On the text
So
box, maybe.
you can see here the fire. Okay, so you can see here the fire, air, water, oxygen, ether, and nitrogen. And out of my art, because it's all 3D, as I mentioned before, I freeze moments and then I use different printing capabilities. So in the middle is 3D printed in bronze, in glass, in resin. And so I create those kind of sculptural moments from those digital arts. How are we on time?
We have 23 minutes more. So you are
Okay,
free.
so if it's okay, I will share. Perfect.
Yes, we are okay.
So what I want to show, great. So what I want to show next is what I've been working in the last year. And on the screen, I'm sharing my new palette. And I've been working on collaboration with different technology companies, my studio, and I've created this toolbox where I can create real-time 3D art that is responding in real time to different inputs. And an input could be from a keypad that as you can see, I control, but also it can be responding to music and sound, and it can be responding to sensors such as emotional artificial intelligence, 3D cameras, etc. And that enables me to do reactive art, as I explained briefly before. With this new toolbox, one of the art forms that I'm doing is live performances. Here's an example of an opera that I was invited to do in the Paris Opera House. It's kind of a cover or a modern interpretation we're asked to do for a very famous show by Ballet Russe 100 years ago, L'après-midi du Fond. And here what I'm doing, I'm using a holographic screen in the theater. So it's totally transparent to the audience. And when you're watching the show, I am oscillating from cinematic art to real-time rendering performances. So now we're watching kind of a cinematic experience. And in a minute, what you'll see is how the camera becomes in the similar point of view as the audience in the opera house. And then we're switching between the virtual dancers to the real dancers. And so I'm constantly taking the audience between holographic display art with front projection to back projections and creating an extended reality opera, if you will. And I wrote a software here that's using Unreal Engine that I've taken the original painting that was painting for the opera set 100 years ago by Basque, painter Basque. And the opera scanned it to me and I created it into data art. And so the orchestra in the opera house playing live over 90 instruments, the music that they generate live in the opera is driving the particle simulations of the set in real time.
Amazing.
So here's a close-up that you can see better. So I took the original painting and brought it to life as a data art, that the music is the driving force for the aesthetic. So because there is a back projection and a front projection and a gap between the hologram Gauzy to the back projection is around 20 meters. So the dancers can dance in between those two displays. And for the audience, it creates this immersive kind of extended reality set. So the next project, I only have two more. So this project I've been working for the last year, but I thought it should be interesting for the audience to hear what I'm working on. So, you know, we're all kind of witnessing the impact of artificial intelligence, and we're all kind of understanding that the way we perceive reality is not as it used to be. It's being driven by algorithms that are analyzing our bubble sphere, our information flow. And so it's a whole discussion that we are all witnessing now, especially in the war that is happening, the unfortunate war that is happening now in Ukraine, the fake news syndrome, you know. So algorithms and artificial intelligence are becoming so powerful in our reality. And the modern human, nobody asked us ever if we want these new technologies, you know. It's not up to any one of us. We're just, you know, experiencing it. We cannot change it. And my attitude to art is I don't believe in the fear approach. I believe in sharing the problem, but also providing ways that we can analyze the problem and see hope. So for example, in the case of artificial intelligence, there's a saying that our home appliances in the next 2 to 3 years will know much more about our feelings than our family members. Yeah, and so artificial intelligence, especially emotional AI, is becoming more and more popular. And so I decided to create art that is literally has the ability for artificial empathy. And art, to me, the most important thing about art is that it can convey emotions from the artist to the observer. And what happens when you enter into this equation, artificial empathy? I want to run a few seconds of a very powerful video of people watching art. And when you see it, it will kind of, I'm sure all the audience that is listening to me now will recognize that we have this unique experience, this unique emotional experience that only happens when we watch art. And then I'll take you to what happens to this unique emotional experience using emotional AI. So here's the video. I'll run a few seconds of it. It's very powerful. It shows people watching the last Leonardo da Vinci that Christie sold recently. So it's the first time the world saw this Leonardo da Vinci. So I'm sorry, I need to continue. It's very powerful and beautiful. Now what I want you to see is an up and coming exhibition that I'm working on, where there are two parts. The first part is a personal experience, and the second part is for a group experience. I'm using here a very powerful technology of emotional artificial intelligence that analyzes in real time the emotional state of the observer. It analyzes micro-expression and the way that your blood is flowing in your face. You don't need to have any sensors. It's all vision technology. And when you're looking at the artwork, what I created here is those very large, transparent holographic screens that when you approach those screens, I'm displaying your emotions as energy in motion. And I start with visualizing your emotional state. And I created this circleplex model of colors. So positive emotion versus negative emotions impact the color and the speed and the energy of the simulation. And you're observing it. And through that, the artwork can understand your emotional state, reflect it back to you, but also perhaps change your emotional state to something else. And so that creates this experience of a collision between our internal state to something that recognizes that, whether we want that or not. Here is an example of a research in aesthetic that I'm investigating of a resonance, an emotional resonance experience. So the rendering happens in real time and responding in real time to the emotional state, the way the artwork looks at you. And what happens is that all of a sudden you are witnessing your feelings. You're literally witnessing yourself experiencing. And the aesthetics could be almost as portraits that are disintegrated. There's energy. I'm investigating different ways to present our emotions for this new exhibition. And the system, as I mentioned, the work itself looks at you. It has a camera, a very regular camera, but the software is really, really smart. And it can analyze both micro expression with a very big data of thousands and thousands of pre-recorded human expressions and their facial expressions, as well as analyzing the way the light is being broken on our face. And frame by frame, it can extract the changes, and it literally shows the bloodstream. And with the deep data, it can show that your bloodstream in your face looks like that versus when you're angry versus when you're happy. And so putting those two data sources, I can get to 97% accuracy of retrieving the emotional state in real time. So the second part of the exhibition is creating a group experience. And very much like in the old days where the shaman or the priest or the guru was able to drive the emotional state of the group, here I'm giving this role to the artwork. And by creating one room where the software and the cameras can analyze a group of people emotional state, create this accumulated data into an average. What I've done here, I connected a very powerful weather visualization engine, and I mapped human behaviors to different weather conditions. So, if the audience will be very angry and anxious and sad, it can drive the landscape or the weatherscape into stormy, snowy, windy, kind of depressing condition. And if it's cheerful and happy and excited, it can be sunny and, elevate the experience. And I'm creating this kind of an immersive dome as an experiential art. And the idea is to not just reflect the emotional state of the group, but really drive the group to a higher state. And obviously it creates kind of a discussion or an experience of where we're heading. What is the future we're heading, where machine will know much more about us and our feeling, or at least will think they know about us and our feeling without our ability to actually control that or monitor that. So here what you're watching is a software where I am working with to map human behaviors to the weather system in real time. And on the right side of the screen, you can see a simple mapping of the weather and the human. So the sunny is correlated to positive behaviors versus angry and depressed to negative and weather, drowsy weather. So I'll run quickly. And I've been looking very deeply into paintings of Turner, and I'm always, inspired by art history. And Turner used to investigate painting nature and sublime moment of nature in order to kind of convey human emotions. I try to create real-time 3D simulations that will echo Turner in a way. And the hologram Gauzy is the canvas I decided to use here. There's an immersive kind of canvas. Could also be as video sculptures, as you can see here. Those are sketches for showing those emotional artworks as video sculptures, reactive video sculptures. So the last thing, I don't want to overwhelm and tire the audience.
Actually, I don't think no one is overwhelmed. We can exceed. We have unlimited time. Normally we end with the 1 hour,
great.
but I hope that we can exceed if you are not tired, if you are not overwhelmed.
No, I'm good, and it's important message that I want to share, as well as ideally get feedback from or open a discussion. So I've been probably like many of you been following and being very worried about the condition of the ocean, global warming in general, but specifically I'm bothered with what we're doing to nature and the problem with plastic. And The UN, I collaborate with the UN on a project to create awareness of this issue. And I created a series of sculptures where I created very realistic simulation of ocean. And then I kind of abused those simulations and created moments that will remind you of taxidermies. So for example, I created sculptures. So here's a simulation of an ocean. And then I start to, interfere, deform the ocean, the landscape, and twisted it into shapes. And then I positioned those 3D printed outputs as taxidermies, like you would see those animals that people hunted, and they're using them as trophies, to show them as a carpet of a zebra or a lion on the wall.
Yeah.
So humanity used to abuse nature in terrible ways in animals, and now we are, the modern day, we are abusing by polluting nature. I created a series of sculptures that are 3D printed using a machine that for the last 2 years I've been developing with the Israeli Technion. It's kind of the Israeli MIT, the Institution of Marine Science in Italy, and other groups, and a local team here of experts. So this is printed using plastic waste that we can take plastic bottles, shred them, and use those flakes to print. And I positioned those sculptures, as I mentioned, in reference to taxidermies. So kind of echoing the abuse humanity did to animals, or still doing to animals, but in this case, to nature as sculptures. And this is a part of a project which I call Plastivore. It's the name of the project. It's kind of like a carnivore, but it's feeding itself from plastic. And following a new ism in art, which the name is Art Util. And in essence, it says that we live in times where art cannot be elitistic anymore. It has to really step out from the white cube and contribute to community, change the world, make an impact. By collaborating with those institutions, we've been working on a solution that before COVID, it was supposed to be in the Art Biennale, but it had to be pushed ahead. So perhaps next year or the year after. And I received this location from the Institution of Marine Science. Their faculty is actually in Venice. And the university owns this villa from the 16th century. And whoever goes to the Venice Biennale must pass through this villa. It's on the junction that you need to go to Giardini and the Arsenale. So you have to go through that. And what I intend to do is to convert this location into a modern ritual where I invite the world, very much like I've done with Laugh in Space. Instead of laughing, here I invite the world to give a gift to a god. And the gift is plastic and the god is a machine. And so as you enter this ritual, there is a conveyor belt where people will put plastic waste. And in 30 minutes, they will see how we take the waste, we shred it, and we make it into a filament to a robotic machine that prints parametric building blocks. While people will wait, they can scribble their own personal messages, very much like in Laugh, where you can take part in the art creation. Here, people can scribble an input as a message. And then in 30 minutes, they'll see how we print from waste elements that become art with their messages in it. So the machine is open source. All the data, everything we're doing will be shareable. It can receive any form of plastic waste, which is a big advantage. And out of that, print something which is meaningful. In this case, I'm showing building blocks that were printed from waste. And now we're doing this pilot in Buenos Aires in with a faculty that are building architecture. It's focusing on architecture, and because we don't have the permission for the insurance and the permission for the safety of those building blocks, that it's going to be used as art, as decoration, as decorative. But here we're literally showing different experiments that are happening in the world. And also what we're doing is to be able to print those parametric building blocks that can from plastic waste and be assembled into something which is constructive and meaningful. So the reason it was important for me to show, because I think as an artist, and perhaps I can come back to the stop the share screen because I finished my slides. Yeah, so the reason it was important for me to show the last project and also the emotional AI is my approach as an artist is not to freak out people and to scream how bad our future is going to be. And I actually want to convey a message of hope, and through the art show an experience that uses really smart technologies that, if utilized in the right way, it's the right way of thinking, can actually provide, you know, a new ways to see our future proactively, dealing with those scary situations. So I really believe in creating art which is not just beautiful, but it also has a hopeful message for people who are actually seeing that.
Exactly.
That's it. That's what I
Thank you very much for
today.
sharing those works. Each and every work that you have shown, actually, I think that they should be lectured. Each one need to be lectured at least 1 hour. Actually, we have unlimited time, so we already exceeded, so it doesn't matter 10 minutes or 20 minutes. So I would like to ask you a couple of questions more. What I've seen from those works that you have shown, that you name, I'm sorry for naming it as a media art, but you already said that it's coding art, if I'm not wrong. Is that so?
To me, it's art. It's
Coding
you know,
art or
art
art of
always.
codes?
Yeah, as I said, to me, I call it art. But if
Okay.
people are putting into the
Well,
jargons, you know, I probably they call it digital art or art made with code. Don't know.
yeah, actually, art clearly has a feature that will continue in branching into new forms, for sure. Also, like once upon a time, it was just 7 classic art, but right now, numerous forms of art. And it will, of course, continue integrating new technology into art. Like today's virtual reality, augmented reality, they offer excellent ways to create immersive works. And the viewer, by using a gadget, they can get into those works. But your works seem to be like gadget free. It's like if those works are like gadget addicted, but your works with the pure eye, I mean naked human body with our hands or eyes and ears, we can observe and also not only observe, but also perceive the works that you do. I think this is intentional, right?
Yes, yes,
And why is that
yes.
so? Do you still believe in
So
human physical interaction? Because one of your sentences you said interactive art, or I don't know, like something like that. You used the word when you were talking about those water sculptures made of precious plastics. Those waves, the simulation of
I
that ocean.
yeah. So first, the art that I create can be multidimensional. In other words, can have a physical presence in a location, a site specific, as well as it can be experienced on the web or even in a Oculus VR headset. My personal focus is to create those immersive experiences. Literally, I think the human presence and the mental system and visual system we all have are the elements to experience my art. Obviously, I'm looking now very deeply into what's happening with NFT. I've been looking and, how can I extend and create powerful art experiences with augmented reality or VR. But I'm very cautious because I've been living technologies for so many years. I always try to create meaningful art and use the technologies that are serving the creation of this particular art, and not get overly excited with gadgets and technologies and overwhelm my audience. Because eventually we are humans, we're visual creatures, we have emotions, we have a physical presence. If something is very big in front of us, it impacts us in a different way compared to something which is very small. If there are certain colors, we react differently to other colors and shapes and compositions. And this is the lingo that was, for hundreds and hundreds or thousands of years, that enable artists to actually convey and influence their audiences. And I don't really think that by adding filters where will force my viewers to have unique goggles or connect sensors, I don't know. To me, it's not that attractive. I really want people to enter into a site and things will happen to them because they are there, and that's it. And how I do it, that's my responsibility as an artist.
Yeah, sure, sure. Well, of course, the future. I mean, when we are talking about what is the future, in the previous presentation we were talking about, and the now is accepted as 3 seconds. But the future is maybe uncertain. There are some things that are certain, but it may be uncertain. But there are some things that are not deniable. They are undeniable, such as climate change, or shifting democracies, or geopolitics. And the only guarantee is that there will be changes. They may be wonderful or terrible, such as today's, like wars, and as you mentioned. And I think it's worth considering how artists will respond to these changes, and of course, as well as the purpose of art. But tonight, I may totally agree with every kind of discussion, and each idea claims what art serves for. And it's not the discussion of tonight, as I said, but besides being an amusement or an entertainment affair, your art especially refers or indicates to actual global issues. Like I took notes, like Arte Util, it's like a manifesto to me, like urgencies
Yeah.
of today, as I took notes. It's so precious and valuable from my point of view. And works that you have shown me, wonder if your works are a part of an immense responsibility that an artist should have. Or do you think that these responsibilities should be of an average individual, but just underlined by art by means of a gift that you have? Do you want me to,
So
summarize the question? I mean, are
no, no,
these
I dig you.
okay then?
I understand
Okay then.
what's the if I believe that artists have a responsibility and people in general.
No,
So the role of an artist in this the role of the artist in society, I believe, is to tell the story that he or she are alive in their own unique kind of language.
yeah, exactly.
And that was all along, and it still is. And there is a moral responsibility, I believe, especially in the time we live now, for artists to kind of amplify um, major threats and issues that are bothering artists on a personal level, and to force them on the discussion of politicians, the society in general, the decision makers, and create kind of an investigation that will lead to a moral compass, because that's what artists are supposed to do. You know, art is not a utility. There's no real mission for art and artists, but there is an expectation that artists will create the voice of their generation, that they will create the voice for voices that are not heard or that are not popular. And I personally think that as an artist, it's in a way a responsibility for myself to focus on subject matters that are vital to the future of people I love, as well as to the things that are extremely important for me. So whether it's privacy, whether it's you know, taking care of our environment and nature, whether it's you know, supervising the evolution of intrusive technologies that, you know, we know how it's going to end if regimes or you know, criminal brains will have access to, and they will. So art has to be striving to have powerful messages and meaning and navigate to I call it a moral compass, and not just be decorative or entertainment. Like I look at the craziness on NFT, and NFT to me is a great new way to distribute digital arts and benefit and create a relationship between the collector and the artist. But what I see people spend a fortune on today, fortune that can be utilized to so many good things instead of buying bored apes. I mean,
exactly, saying nothing.
you know, I think there is, yeah, nothing, right? I think there is a place for a lot of things, but I think we're losing the parameters as a society. The numbers are so big now in NFT that it forces me to ask the question, you know, aren't there, you know, better usage for those cryptocurrencies than buying just stupid whatever? So those issues do bother me, and I believe I should voice them and not just create a fear doctrine, but really also as an artist, especially an artist that understands technology, point on positive ways, you know, and show a better future. That's my take to it. So I treat it very seriously. It's not just for entertaining or you know, becoming famous or popular. It's the only way for me to make sense of my reality and to be connected to this extreme time. And it is extreme time that we're all experiencing. It's huge magnitude different than it used to be because of the speed of things.
Well, we already ran out of time, but there are lots of technical questions. I will ask only one, and another one, an important one, is like, okay, I'll ask the second one later. The first one that as I said, lots of technical questions, but about these holograms. The question is, most
Yeah.
of the questions are, did you use any vaporizing technology in order to demonstrate those beams of light, or is just on the air like an hologramic? Is that a new technology? Did you use any vaporizing or bubbles of water? Did you use any media?
So for the water,
Yeah, for the water dancer.
dancer, it's
Yeah, on the lake.
the water dancer is a water screen. It's a water wall.
Okay, that was a water wall. Okay, this is the
Um,
answer.
yeah, that I'm projecting on. The
Okay.
other examples of holograms, I'm using a gauzy that is made of silver threads. So it's transparent to the audience, but when a strong projector beam hits this fabric, this holographic gauzy, the quality of the image is very, very powerful, and it's still very transparent to the audience. So that's for the opera that I showed and other things.
And the other question was, is that, do you have any, you don't need to answer these questions, but do you have any intentions to do about this Russian invasion Okay, I converted the question,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
I used some softer
First,
words.
yeah,
The question is a little bit harder.
takes, yeah, yeah. First, I need perspective to digest the horrific things we're seeing. I mean, it's overwhelming me and saddening me like anyone that is connected today. It needs to me perspective of time. Um, there are few fundamental terrible wars or conflicts around the world, and I live in a country which we have our own internal
Yeah,
um,
unfortunately.
I call it moral issues, which I don't have to look very far to Russia and Ukraine. Um, so I try to take the subject matter and maybe take it above the resolution of intrusive um, message to something which can have a reference to this particular situation, but can touch on the human nature of this machoistic approach of achieving results through violence. So what I'm trying to say is not being too obvious in the political message, but whoever will see that understand the connection. It's like the Guernica. So if I am to deal with those kind of terrible days, it will be beyond just criticizing a Putin or another leader, but giving a perspective of why are we behaving as the way we are behaving. Because I don't think we need to fuel the fire. Those who can speak, and I can speak because I don't have any connection to Russia. It's atrocity. It's terrible. It's sad. It's devastating. And there are many others places that maybe not in this particular magnitude that we see today. And I think it threats our future, all of us. I don't know what I'll do particularly, but for now, I'm just overwhelmed and sad, like everybody.
Thank you very much for your time. And tonight we had attendees or the audience from.
I cannot hear you.
You can't? Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I hear you from very far, but it's okay.
I'm sorry, I just dropped my mic, so maybe I lost the. Is that okay now?
It's okay.
Can you hear me?
I hear you.
Sorry about the inconvenience. Tonight we had attendees from Pristina, Kosovo, Milan, Italy, and Berlin, Germany, and Famagusta and Nicosia from North Cyprus, and the rest was from Turkey, of course. Thank you very much sharing your works with us. It guided new perspectives and new ideas. Thank you very, very much for your time and for your participation. It's not for me to congratulate you for your work, but I can only thank you as an individual, as a human being on earth, for your sensitive way of looking to the issues and the way that you demonstrate those issues to publicity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for listening. Thank you for the opportunity.
And hope to see you here in Turkey in as soon as possible.
Yeah, I'd love to come. I love Istanbul. I've been twice. Unforgettable.
Have you been? Yeah, who knows? It may be closer than you think. Thank you very much and goodbye. And for
Thank
the
you very
audience,
much.
next week we are going to speak about metaverse, actually architecture of metaverse with Hayri Atak. So see you next week on Tuesday at 8 o'clock. Goodbye.
Bye bye.